Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Just Another Kill Team podcast, connecting Kill Team communities across the globe. If you're passionate about the tactical skirmish game that brings together strategy, lore, and creativity, you are in the right place. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and stay updated with our latest episodes. If you want to support the show, check out our Patreon. Your support means a lot to us. Follow us by using the social media links in the podcast description for all the latest news, and be sure to leave a review to let us know what you think. Thanks for tuning in. Here's today's episode.
All right, we're back here with Branden B, hot off his win from CritCon, which is the Pacific Northwest Regional Tournament. I know there's a better name for it, a Cascadia Regional Independent Tournament, I think, right?
Yep, that's CritCon.
Let's go. I remember the acronym.
Yeah, trust me, we have trouble remembering them too. Have you ever, the whole cats debacle? We still don't know what cats means.
Yeah. Notably, Branden is one of the only players that is playing Blooded and doing well with them. Because Blooded, me and Jason do our week-to-week Patreon stat show. They're not very good. Everyone does poor with them. But Branden's out here winning 6-round tournaments, getting golden tickets, the third golden ticket for him, it sounds like. And I thought it would be fun to dig into what makes Blooded good right now, especially as everyone is looking at Deathwatch, Canoptic Circle, Raveners, or some other stuff. And obviously, we'll loop in a little bit of the world's context because we've got a new patch that everyone is going to be playing on. So we'll have a little bit of things for everybody.
Yeah, the new patch just dropped. Worlds is like from when this comes out is just like a few days away. Exciting times.
Yeah, next week flying out Wednesday, so less than a week. I'm flying out to get out there, and I'm excited to go back. This will be my third time at Worlds, repping Blooded for the third time in a row. Hoping to not run into the Colts Commando meta of the first Worlds I went to, and then this meta of Warp Coven. Legionnaire beats everyone except Warp Coven, and Warp Coven beats everyone, including Legionnaire's meta that started this last Worlds. That was rough.
Yeah, now we're in the Canoptic Circle, and Deathwatch beat everyone. Although, the meta game will be a little bit different going into Worlds. We did get a bunch of buffs on some of these teams. Rekka Crew got their big buff finally. Just charging is good enough to get that APL.
Yeah, that's gonna be really nice for them. It also reduces how much stun grenades gutted that team. If you had an operative that had a stun grenade that wasn't a stun grenade, it had free grenades of some sort to just stun them over and over, they were just hurting all day. Whether it be the bomb squigs getting stunned or their operatives getting stunned, it didn't matter. It just nerfed so much of their output.
What are you thinking? Yeah. Is Rekka Crew going to climb into big dog territory and hit top 8?
No, I think you're going to see people bring them, but I think that they're going to be sort of locked. So Angels of Death did get some buffs in this patch, right? But it's just not enough. They're the most honest and least durable kill team, Marine team, 6-man Marine team. They're arguably less durable than Deathwatch despite having an extra body, even if you take all durability faction stuff. So, I don't know. I think Rekkas are going to be this year's Angels of Death, where you'll see some of them show up and they'll get a couple wins here and there, but they're sort of more of a gatekeeper than anything.
Do you agree with that, Travis?
Yeah, I mean, the old meta, the meta coming into the last Worlds was definitely built around a lot of the elites, and then whether or not Inquisition agents were going to be good enough to be able to keep them down. Going into this meta, we got a whole new set of, missions and TAC ops, and obviously, I think this TAC op deck looks a lot more even for everyone, so I think that is definitely going to be the big question of Worlds. Of the teams that are good, how many of them are picking one TAC op all the time? Because, at the last Worlds and for, 3 months into the meta game of the last edition or the last deck, everyone was like, plant beacons is obviously the best because you will score 6 points and it's very hard to interact with. And we'll see if that ends up being the case for this go around.
Yeah, I think you're going to find you're going to find people that have some experience with the TAC ops, and then you're going to be able to notice people that are learning the TAC ops on the point, as we go. Because infiltration, as much as people hyped up plant devices is way overrated in my opinion. Plant devices is good and solid, especially if you're Crute or Rattlings, where you can do it regardless of your opponent sitting on the point, right? But even then, it is so much investment to try to get that early on. And then if your opponent has Steel Intel, you're just giving up the same amount of points in Steel Intel because you're giving up that whatever model did that. So I think that it's just... And then track enemies.
It's going to be a little bit of a crapshoot because there's a lot of new things on the board. And especially because of the Worlds patch, Kasrkin are basically a new team. Obviously, maybe they're still not good enough. Rekka Crew got a big buff on whether or not they can play the mission, because now they can go through stun grenades, they can charge, get a 3 APL, finish off a dork, and then make sure that they have that 3 APL to contest things. They can contest zones by just charging and passing, which is not a thing that they could have done in the past. So there's definitely some neat stuff that's going on. Do you have any big standouts for teams that you expect to be able to beat back Canoptic Circle and Deathwatch? Because, as far as me and Jason can tell, it's like 50% of the metagame, and they are winning 55% of their games. Canoptic Circle some weekends are like 60, and everything else is doing a little bit worse. But that was before we got the official GW patch to like basically boost a lot of the teams and make the elites a little bit worse, because now smoke grenades are only Pierce 1, and they don't affect Pierce 1 at all. They only affect Pierce 2.
Yeah, I think that the patch is in the right direction, but I also don't think it's enough for the teams that were like too low to be able to compete. So Rekkas is a really great example, in my opinion. There's going to be at least a couple players playing Rekkas, even if they didn't get this patch. In my opinion, Rekkas are a really fun team to play. If either of you've played them, they're really fun. They're really straightforward, but like nothing feels better than having a 3 APL orc just go off and do orky things, right?
I mean, 6 dice is a hell of a drug.
Yeah, 6 dice with delayed punishing is ridiculous. It's really, really nice to just pick, and this guarantees you're dead. Cool, good talk. It's really powerful and really fun and very straightforward, so your opponent usually has a good time playing because they get to do their thing as well. But that doesn't mean that they're going to be at the top of the meta. It just means that they'll perform a little bit better. And I don't think that anything in this balanced data slate really fixes any of the meta. It takes away a lot of the feels bads and gives a little bit of a boost to teams that were struggling. Salvagers, for example, being able to comms anywhere from anywhere is really, really, really good.
Franken Jaeger also getting a little bit of a buff. Like a lot of the most struggling teams got like a little bit of a boost, and then a lot of the mid tier teams, or like the good flexible teams like elves, a lot of the elf teams got a little bit of a tap. So now you can't just fall back for free whenever you do your crit and run away. So there's a little bit more risk involved with going in on the elf team. So a little bit of the slop on the upper end for the, like B+, A- teams has been kind of trimmed off, and now some of these like D teams or C teams are now maybe C or B teams.
Yeah, I think the only thing the meta really did, the balanced data slate really did, is there are 2 teams in particular that I feel are extreme losers from this data slate. One being Warp Coven. If you reverted all of the nerfs they've gotten since 3rd edition and then made them a 5-man team, I could see it. Okay. The fact that they don't have nearly as much utility or reliability as Deathwatch or even healing at this rate, it's absurd how efficient that team is. Deathwatch is in comparison.
Warp Coven look like maybe they'll eventually be a Deathwatch style team now that their faction identity is we have 5 Marines instead of 6. But for the time being, if they did well at Worlds, I would be exceedingly surprised. I would be exceedingly surprised at this point. That's not to say it's not possible. Being able to go 3 Sorcerers and 4 Zangors, so you have a 7-man team. Maybe that's enough for you to beat the 6-man elite team. Maybe. It doesn't seem likely, but theoretically, I could maybe imagine it. I don't like I said, obviously anyone can hear from the tone of my voice. I don't really think that's possible. But, there are other teams that got some pretty big boosts, like Scout Squad. They got a lot of roll compression, so now their ambush is just whatever you want it to be. It just gives you the boost always, and then you also get a new ploy, which is kind of fun. Which is also a bigger balancing thing than I would have expected out of Games Workshop, right? Like just ripping a ploy out wholesale, recombining a ploy in the middle of an edition. I don't think that was really in the cards for what people were expecting for like, what does a balanced pass looks like in the middle of the
and the adjustments made into the data slate are all in the right direction. The Rekka one's a really clear example of it changes the way the team gets played dynamically, right? The thing with Scouts changes the way that team gets played. You don't just have one guy that changes his position and does a dash. You have D3 guys that changes the whole aspect of it, right? And so this data slate definitely has things that change how teams play, but I don't think it's enough to shake down the top of the meta is my problem with it. I think it's all in the right direction. I think that Deathwatch got off super lucky. I think that there are a couple things with Canoptic Circle that need to get tuned. But like the healing per turn, I think was obviously just an oversight that was never intended. I had a practice game against Jason Steinke, and he healed something close to 27 damage on the same operative in the same turn. That was a very toxic experience, even though it was over TTS. So
even more toxic on TTS.
Yeah, right.
He can't even look at Jason's face and be like, "Is this really what we're doing here?" And Jason's like,
"Yeah," because then I could at least then he can buy me a beer for the trouble. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, he's not gonna Grubhub you a beer, unfortunately.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so obviously Canoptek, Circle, and Deathwatch made it through the patch pretty scot-free, mostly because they're within their first 3-month window, which is kind of like Kill Team has been going now for this is our fourth year, and in your first 3 months, they won't really adjust your team all that much.
The fact that
only major example was Felgor on release, where they basically just like ripped out part of their rules, and then they were still really good for a little bit.
I think the only other example is Colts. Colts got a really quick patch, but then Tacoma Open still played without it because it didn't come out in time for Tacoma Open that year. And then that's all I can think of.
Overall, it's not a thing that GW is really willing to do, and even with that said, their win rates are kind of almost in range for the most part. So I'm not surprised they didn't touch it. I said almost. Okay.
At this point, we had some audio errors, so in the meantime, I'm just going to throw in a quick little shout out to Crossfire Games for having the coolest accessories ever. The battle box is amazing, the tokens are amazing, all that good stuff is super cool. We've got a discount code that you can use, just another kill team, at checkout. We've got a link in the show notes as well if you want to hop in, grab some goodies, and join the Crossfire Club. We were pretty much just talking about Deathwatch. Is Deathwatch too strong or not? And personally, I think they're probably not too terrible right now. But maybe they're rude to some teams. Like, I haven't really done a whole lot of playing a Horde against Deathwatch. So I imagine that's a very different experience from playing other elites or kind of mid-range teams against Deathwatch. So on that note, I would love to hear about, Branden, your perspective on Deathwatch from a blooded player's perspective.
I think that Deathwatch's biggest cushion on that team is that they get the double counteracts. Being able to double counteract, especially into a Horde team, boosts your APL from 15 to 25, which makes you and then you add in a free mission action. So now you're effectively 26 APL on the board. That's a lot, especially into a Horde team. And I think that the biggest design of Deathwatch is based around that counteract, which I feel is the absolute worst mechanic. It feels, and this is just my aspect of a Horde play, this isn't specific to Deathwatch, but my hot take is that counteracting is a no-skill ability, where you're just sort of taking what has been given to you because they couldn't delete your model in one go. And there's a lot of that. There's not a lot of skill expression in that, in my opinion. I know it takes the appropriate call to take the right action at the right time, but if you have 10 dudes all that can take an extra shot, and each time you do that, you reliably kill one of your opponent's models, and then they can't kill your models because it takes so many more resources. That means that it's all on the Horde players' agency to make sure that they're not giving those counteracts up, those plays that suddenly, instead of that model charging, fighting, and shooting and killing two of your models, then it counteracts, shoots, and fights, or fights and shoots, whichever the case is, and kills two more models, is all on the Horde player, and it's not on the elite player, which feels atrocious watching it happen. Because you'll be exposing yourself as a Horde player, and then you just get to watch as they tear you apart if your dice don't come through, for example.
Yeah. I feel like just kind of assuming you would, if it was me, I would lean into melee more, since if the model's going to die anyways, melee puts more damage through more reliably. Is that kind of valid, or what's your solution?
And actually, hold on, before you go in deep, what was your solution for CritCon? Because obviously you were playing Blooded into the hostile meta of Canoptic Circle and Deathwatch, and somehow made it through 6-0. Did you have to play against him? Did you have a game plan for if you did have to play against him? What was like the vibe before? We can go a little bit in depth here because now I think it makes sense.
Yeah, so I did not play into Deathwatch. I was hoping to because I wanted to see like how it stacks up. Then if the game that I could have played against them, I ended up facing against Nemesis Claw because of the way BCP does tiebreakers, which was fine. But I ended up playing 4 Marine teams plus Canoptic and Raveners, and that was my weekend. I played Plague Marines to start into a new player who didn't like. I had to explain how like movement and climbing works, and that happens at a GT. You could just get the people that have never been to a tournament before. But the whiplash from that to round 2, because round 2 I went into Jeshua Kelly, and he was playing Canoptic, and God, that team is ridiculous. And the game plan into them is pretty much, at least mine. There's 2 mindsets that I have of it. There's one is plant devices. You sort of need to take plant devices into that team. Still, intel is not reliable. It doesn't drop off the bugs. Track enemy is like doable, but then you're spending so many resources to not kill someone that's on engage and get blooded tokens. Like your sniper seems like really good for it, and your Flenser would if he's not in combat, but it's just not really beneficial. So we unfortunately came to time. I think if we went and played turn 4, he probably would take it. But the judge came over and said, "Hey, where you at?" We were in the first activation of turn 4, trying to speed through it, and he said to cut it off at turn 3, so that's what we did. Very close game, 7-6 scoring to Canoptic, and I think there's you either go plant devices and play super cagey and give up a model for the middle and their home objective and score your plant devices and see if you can mess with the primary, because the crit op also scores very low for a lot of these missions. So if you can try to contest on the crit op and guarantee your attack ops, you're just trying to do point interference from that point. And that's what I did to Ika win out there. Into Raveners, you just sit with a Meltagun with 3 APL and say, "Come on out." I think the most pivotal thing about that game was that I got Turning Point 3 initiative. I gave away initiative and took initiative so that I would have the reroll and things of that nature to try to guarantee having TP3. And which means that even if he writhed into sight, which he could still do because we were not playing the World's Patch at CritCon, my Meltagun was just literally setting with 3 APL ready to nuke. And if he rises into sight, I'm just going to do Glory Kill for relentless auto crit punishing Meltagun. Good luck. So like having to pressure and build a wall so they can't just freely get into is a big part of it, which is why I think you're not going to see as many Raveners this time around. Not being able to writhe into sight on turn 2 or 3 when you want to be aggressive and score route or start on your dominate and get into combat and things is really going to change how that team has
they no longer have the ability to just like freely aggress on people, and they also lost a lot of their free CP. Like before, you can kind of think of the Ravener Prime as kind of giving you 2 to 3 CP almost guaranteed, and now it's like you might get 1, you might get 2, but you're probably not going to get 3.
You usually get 1, sometimes you get 2. You almost never get 3.
Yeah. Whereas before, I think I was expecting to get 3 almost every game. So it's probably a good change as far as like trying to figure out how good Raveners really are, because now you can get a sense for which part of the rule set is most powerful. And obviously, right of the side is going to be a big one. So you obviously had a game plan for Deathwatch before going to CritCon. You want to talk about the game plan, or is the game plan basically synonymous with all of the other elites?
It's pretty much synonymous with Angels of Death, pretty much. You want to take ping shots where you can. If they have to go on engage to go on guard and things of that nature, having an always silent sniper is amazing. Multiple times at CritCon into a Marine body did he shoot and get over 9 damage or more, and either cost command points to save a Marine or cost some sort of other function to like make sure that the Marine could not just instantly die. The sniper hitting on 2s is just amazing. Getting the free damage. You just try to get free damage where you can. And when you send your models in, you have to kind of agree that, okay, this model is going to get damage and someone else will have to clean it up. Because almost none of your models outside the Ogren can actually one-shot a Marine without a whole lot of luck. And that is with having a Power Fist, 2 Power Swords, a brutal 4/4 weapon, and a lethal 5 knife guy. Like, you have a lot of damage out, but whoever goes out is probably going to die when you go to put that damage in. And making sure that damage sticks is a big part of it. Last activation melting guns, last activation plasma guns, last activation grenadiers, and making sure that you can actually threat range to get there. Raveners being able to switch to conceal was sort of a problem for a minute when they could writhe into sight, because they could go back onto conceal and counteract and prevent some of your shooting that you were planning on doing into them, especially if they charged into heavy cover. That could cause issues. Deathwatch have that same ability for a command point, so you got to watch out for that and time your things appropriately. And there's going to be times where there's going to be no other choice but to just, you have to risk your plasma gun, you have to risk your melting gun, you have to risk your Ogren or Power Fist, and you have to calculate and figure out when those risks are appropriate.
And that's kind of like on a map-by-map basis, opponent-by-opponent basis, because some of the Space Marine players might play a little bit further back, some of them might creep up a little bit more, but all of them are going to feel the loss of that smoke grenade, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny because I kind of wanted, as far as blooded play, I kind of want the smoke to go back to where it was, because I'd rather get within 2 inches and negate it completely than deal with it at all.
Yeah, because for anyone who hasn't realized it, smoke grenades got changed so that the Pierce 2 can now go down to Pierce 1 or Piercing crits. But that effect is always there rather than having the 2 inches off on both of the effects, because obscurity turns off within 2, but that smoke obscuring part of the armor piercing is always there now.
Yeah, the vast majority of my shots are within 2 anyway. So, like, I guess that won't affect my crack grenades that I throw, because blooded have really good crack grenades. Probably one of the better crack grenades in the game as far as, the general equipment goes.
So are you finding that Blooded's ability to just put an ungodly amount of damage with a couple of characters still remains pretty relevant? Like, how well are you able to stay back and defend? Or is it that the metagame, because it's so elite-centric at the upper end, has shifted to a point where players aren't really used to playing against a big horde team?
It's a mix of both, because there's not that many people that are used to playing into 12 operations. 12 operatives. You say you have 12 activations, and people are like, holy crap, I can counteract and then still counteract. Okay, cool. And so there's one function of that, but at the same time, they're just like the blooded, the amount of damage blooded put out just has to be respected.
And it gets higher over time too, because a lot of the teams, you start relatively strong, you get a little bit weaker over time, and then by the end of the game, you're just kind of like running around doing stuff. Blooded, generally at the end of the game, your last 4 operatives, they all automatically hit. Some of them automatically hit crits, and they're pretty flexible at the end of the game, right?
Yeah, I really think that the power bandwidth for blooded is, we have some decent power in turn 2, we have a whole lot of power in turn 3. And then depending on how turn 3 goes is how much gas we'll have in the tank for turn 4. And I've found that the harder I can pressure and not actually risk models and not not lose resources, even if I don't get kills out of it, then the better off I am in turn 3 when I really want to go hard and rip things open.
All right, so have you ever tried any other horde teams? Because obviously this is your 3rd time going to Worlds. You played Blooded every time. I think every time I see you do extremely well. When me and Jason are looking at week-to-week stats for the Patreon show, when we see Blooded do well, you're one of the people that randomly will show up. It's like, oh, Branden in the Pacific Northwest, killing people with blood. So it's not the first time we've seen it. I'm not surprised that you're still doing it. What do you feel like the Blooded strengths are compared to the other teams, and where do you feel like the other Horde teams are falling short, or what sort of adaptations do you think that you have as a Horde player that other Horde teams could be doing? Like, tips for, Farstalker Kinban, because they're also kind of a melee team. Chaos Cult, also kind of a melee Horde team too.
Mm-hmm. So I think the biggest difference between Chaos Cult and Blooded, in my opinion, is the flexibility that we get from having guns at all. Any of the damage from Chaos Cult that is free is all out of the Mind Witch, which is
it's really just
fine.
Chip. It's not like
it's just chip.
It's not a gun that's going to shoot someone and kill someone. It's really just there
Correct.
to force your opponent to come forward and play ball.
Yeah, and it's also some of your utility because it's got the stun, right? But the amount of like free damage Blooded can get, for example, the just the sniper alone, hitting on 2s, which means I don't care about shooting into obscurity. It means I could just say here's 4 hits down to 3 hits, make all your armor saves or take any amount of damage. And being able to focalize that for nothing and just like burn that activation is so commonly such a sweet thing. Plus, I can shoot into combat, so combats that you think are safe aren't anymore. I had a very clear example of this on stream against Nemesis Claw, where he had a model come out. It was I want to say it was the Ventrilo, but I could be wrong on that. I don't remember which model I was shooting at. But what had happened is they had double charged my Melta and my Butcher, did the on-charge damage to the Butcher, and then fought the Melta. The Melta punched back for 2 damage and then blew up for 3, so he did 5 damage before he died, bringing the Marine down from 14 to 9 health. And then I dashed my sniper over, shot into combat, landed 4 hits. He only made 1 armor save, so now he has to CP reroll just to stay alive at all, because he's at 9 health, and each one of those hits does 3 damage. So now he's in combat with a power sword wielding Butcher with only 3 health. Now he can't counteract to kill me anymore because I just have that damage to like pile in. And being able to do that is something that I think Blooded have a really strong advantage of, because it's not just like Pathfinders have the ability to shoot into combat, which is always something you have to like keep in mind. But then if they shoot into combat and they're shooting into 3-up armor saves, maybe you make all your saves because they don't have that many piercing weapons. And you're like, cool, I take 5 damage, but when you fight the Pathfinder, they don't blow up on you when they punch you back for 2. So you've taken 7 and you're at 7 health to kill their next operative instead of being at 3 health with a power sword. I think that like mix is really where Blooded shine, is that they have damage through everyone, not just their guns, not just their fighting. It's they have damage on both sides of it all the way across the board, which I think is a really big strong suit over things like Cults, who are a very, very strong team. Definitely not someone to be disrespected, but that flexibility is where Blooded really shine. And if you can use your tools the right way, let me rephrase that.
You can pick your ranges, right? So you can choose where the engagement is going to happen based on where your operatives are and where your opponent's weakest. So you get your plasma gun, your opponent gives you a shot of opportunity with obscurity. You can take it and then dash them off into the side. Whereas something like Pathfinders, because they're only shooting, you don't really ever get the chance to be like, oh, maybe I'll send a dude into melee and break up the lines. Whereas Blooded, you have that choice at all times. And for someone like Chaos Cult, because they're all melee, they really just unga bunga when they go in, and they either make it and kill them or they die.
Yeah, and a lot of like the coolest things I've ever done when I was playing Nemesis Claw was charge fight with the Fearmonger. You fight and kill a body, doesn't matter who it is, and then you do the dash proclivity for murder. So you proclivity and dash, and then now you have an extra angle to throw the grenade into a group that didn't expect to have a splash 2 grenade into them. Things of that. That's really where a lot of the strength comes in, from like really cool plays and things that other teams just can't do. And Cults and Wormblade really suffer from that, in my opinion. They're very, very linear because all of their APLs fixed in the operatives that it's at. I think that Brood Brothers have a little bit of a better time of it because of the out-of-activation dash. Plus, they do have the comms. Plus, they have a 3 APL person all the time. So they do have a little bit more flexibility, but I think they've sort of been pigeonholed into taking the Magus, because the Magus being able to shoot into combat or Mind Blast into combat is one of the strongest things about that team.
I think so. Let me try to coalesce your thoughts into like one solid point, because what I'm
Yep.
hearing is that if you're playing the Horde team in the current metagame, you're looking for any small angle where you can take some free damage or a guaranteed set of damage to set up something in the later phase. Blooded particularly gets some benefits here because as they go and kill themselves, your later activations get a little bit stronger. But if I were to draw an analogy to something like Farstalker Kinban, because they can also do all the ranges okay, take your silent shots where you can, take your stun shots where you can, so that later guys can do a little bit more work, right?
Yep, definitely. And you have to make sure you're really using all those tools to the top, because the teams that are durable are very durable. And if you're not bleeding out the edges of your damage output, you're not going to be able to punch through.
And I think one of those things that's hard for Horde teams, and probably Elf teams too, is when you're fighting against those really durable big teams, you can't really give your opponent a way to use all three of that APL. So can you walk us through a little bit like your mindset on a Horde team? How are you trying to avoid giving your opponents the 2-for-1s?
So a really big part of avoiding 2-for-1s is, one, knowing their movement shenanigans. If you think they move 6 and suddenly the Phobos guy from Deathwatch moves 7, that charge distance is a really big thing, and that can make or break an entire flank if you're not careful with it. So knowing like your opponent's threat ranges is vital.
Do
And
you
knowing
err
if
on
they,
the side of just being too far back, or do you have to ride that line of having someone just barely close enough so you're really, really nitty gritty on how far things are actually going? Because I think there are like two schools of thought, right? You can like measure out the
yeah,
max distance plus the counteract, which, for any Space Marine is 11 inches, and then you add the extra 2 inches for a shot. So basically 13 inches from the starting line, you just don't move. But obviously you give up a lot of equity there, and as far as like where your operator is going to be positioned to be able to fight. So do you ride that 13-inch line, or are you playing like a 9-inch line trying to get all those angles?
it really depends on the map, because there's a lot of maps that you can shut down a lot of those 13 inches and shut them down to a 10 inch or even a 9 inch threat range with a well placed razor wire. And something that's definitely changed in this edition with a lot of these maps, because getting across the halfway point on Tomb World is very hard. Getting past the halfway point, even on Volcus, is also really hard into a lot of these elite teams. So a properly placed razor wire, I've taken razor wire way more often than I would like to admit. And light barricades are, I even as a blooded player, I'll make these walls. I don't care if the Ogre can't charge all the way across the map. I only need him to go this far. But all my other 25 mil bases are getting through to do the thing, and I'm gonna stop every 32 and 40 mil base that I can, so that I can do the thing and they can't.
You also use light barricades in the same way?
Yeah, almost exclusively I use light barricades to block more than a point of cover. There's so many teams out there that have a Seek Light ability, and even though the main Seek Light ability got nerfed with Cancer, they only have 5 attacks, 1-2. Into the Dark is suddenly it's lethal 5, and suddenly I lose a 7 health, whatever it is, to that real quickly. Saving on 5s is really rough into that.
All right. So basically, you make the obstacle course. You take your free shots where you can. You give your opponents bait so that they do the engagement, and you try to limit them to one target at a time so that everyone else can take free pot shots.
Yeah, something that was part of Phobos' superpower before they got nerfed, was that their Reavers could run up with a balanced bolt pistol that's AP1 and put reliably 7 damage into you, and then if you're more than 7 health, they'll do D3 damage in addition to kill all the 8-wound operatives with the crits. Taking away balance within 2 from that team so they can't just run up 7 inches and shoot twice is a really big deal, and people didn't see how big of a deal it was until a couple months in, really, where people started to feel that change. And you cannot give up double kills. If you're giving up double kills, you need those models better have gotten their value already. If they're killing your Meltagun, then Meltagun needs to have gotten a shot off. If they are able to get a double kill even without you activating and without you getting any damage throughout the game, you're positioned too aggressively and you're not using your models right. As an example, 2 models that I throw up to die all the time are the Flenser and the Thug. The Flenser has a strike on death, and the Thug has -1 normal damage. The Thug also has Brutal on his weapon, so he reliably gets 4 damage in. I've had the Flenser get 11 damage in with 2 crits as he gets hit once, stabs, gets hit again and dies, stabs again, and then will blow up for 3 damage, and suddenly you get 11 damage on someone else's activation, and now you're getting real damage out of those guys. So if you're going to risk them, you need to know who you're risking and what you're following up with, because if you don't have anything to follow up and you're just risking a model, there's no reason for that model to be there.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a good amount of sense. I mean, Jason abused the fact that melt-a-guns might not get kills for an entire half edition, it feels like.
Oh, yeah, and that's still my outlook. And I have been dabbling around with, like, non-elite teams, and there's a lot that you've been saying that I absolutely love. And just to kind of, like, recap and put a spin on it, you're basically setting up a network where you've got, it sounds like exactly 2 aggressors, and then they are covered, and you kind of just like you string it out and hit with a couple things at a time, and if they ever aggress at you too much, then you can hit them super duper hard, so you don't want to be staged all the way back because you need to cover everyone else on the front lines, and you don't want to be staged too far forward because then you give up double kills.
Yeah, so it's a very, very tricky, delicate balance with it. I had a TTS game against Raveners. We were playing energy cells, and in turn 2, the only charge target that I was giving up was my chief. But if they charge my chief, I can redirect the fight to the Ogren, which is a very different fight, because now the Crush is not getting a +1 on his Crush roll. Also, the Ogren has a very real chance of just killing any of them if they don't roll well enough, because he's immune to shock, and he does shock. So, like, he's very likely to live. I'm hitting on 2s with Relentless, so I'm usually will win that combat. If I don't win it, I'm going to put a major dent into that bug, whatever it is, and then you're not going to want to fight the Power Sword Chief afterwards. So that's usually a big dissuader. And if they run up and shoot, then now they're on my side of the board. They're away from their tunnel, and I have a melting gun, a power fist, an Ogren, a sniper, a plasma gun. I have all my threats counter-threating that position. And being able to make sure you're doing that appropriately, where you only give up that much, is a very practiced thing.
Yeah.
I have a bloody guide that's outdated right now for 2024 crit ops, and people ask me for it all the time, and I send it. I'm like, look, this is outdated for previous crit ops because I talk a lot about how I played champion a lot, and something that is still relevant in that pack is that your positioning matters more now than ever. The more you get your positioning down and the more you're practice with it, the less you get punished, because blooded die. I cannot tell you how many times the Ogren has died to a AP0 bolt gun because he just saves on 5s and just takes damage like nothing. Las guns tear through him. If you let your models get shot or hit, they will die. So the trick is to getting the damage out before that happens.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing that I've kind of been experimenting with in my latest journey back into hordier teams, because I want to figure out how to stage aggressively, and obviously that's not easy, but I'm like, okay, so I'll pick a point where I want to stage one threat, and then I'll choose something that's like 2.5 inches away, and I'll put a light barricade there, and then especially if I'm able to like cover that, like with Casterkin, for example, with the medic, then I'm staged there, where if you have Seek Light or something, you're probably shooting a target that's not ideal. It's covered by a medic anyways, and then that's just kind of like my second layer of staged forward enough that I can launch a threat out of there, and like far enough apart that I'm not easily giving up double kills. And sometimes that also means instead of the barricade pointing towards the enemy, you kind of rotate it 90 degrees, and it's like if you charge in here and shoot me, now the next guy in line is covered by a barricade from the angle that you will be flanking me. And that's kind of like two of the things that I've been thinking about a lot in terms of staging with a horde. Because on some maps, there's only a couple of like spots at a time, and I feel like it's not always easy to cover your forward threats with some of these layouts, and just like plugging that gap with a light barricade or a heavy barricade, if you can reach it there, is kind of one of the big things that I've thought about.
Yeah, definitely. You also need to realize that you don't need to, unless you're playing route, and if you're playing route, especially as a horde team, you better recognize that whatever you're trying to position that's going to score route is also in position to die, whatever it is. There's very, very few maps where you can position safely and still score route, particularly on long edge deployment, where open long edge deployment. That's a little bit more doable because route is so close to the center line. You can get across it with a couple of the heavy trains and still be pretty safe from like their backline threats. But even then, you still want to be positioning appropriately and properly and making sure that you're not giving up double kills. The second you give up a blast, it just feels atrocious.
Yeah, having the 2-inch ruler handy at all times while you're setting up definitely makes avoiding blasts more doable.
Yep.
And then eventually it just becomes baked into your brain and you just look at it and you're like, that's clearly 2.1 inches.
You still measure it. You still
No, just me? No, I'm the only one that's doing that? All
right. I have a tendency to put the ruler in position so that people can see, hey, these guys are actually 2 inches apart.
Yeah, always good to make sure it's already explained because you don't want to be in the position where suddenly it's a he said, she said.
Yeah,
a little awkward.
This is all bad.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, we kind of like tickled on some of the balanced data slate changes. So it sounds like no one thinks it's a big enough shakeup that there's a new boogeyman, or is there any that is like kind of like like maybe ratlings are going to be some secret hotness? I haven't even thought about that at all. That's just an example.
Yeah, there's a couple people that are really hoping that these changes shake up the meta enough for teams like Ratlings in particular to be something that can be counter meta and sort of surprise people. And I will definitely say that you can get some surprise games with people not having games against them. I know for sure I've had a couple games where there's not that many blooded players, let's be real. Every time you see blooded stats, we're under 100 games per month or whatever it is, and there's not that many of us out there. So when you do run into a blooded player, locally, someone will be like, oh, I want to practice against blooded. I'm like, you're just practicing against me. You're not practicing against blooded, because practicing against the team and practicing against the player are two very different things. And my blooded are definitely different from anyone else's blooded around for a reason, right? So it's very, very. There are teams that are going to be like that. I think that if there's any dark horses out there, though, Mandrakes are sort of spooky. They just sort of play in this different dynamic that I think people have forgotten about. I think Commandos have more play than people give them credit for. I know that their TAC ops aren't great for them, but I think they could definitely play around better with still intel, and actually track enemy with the grot is actually not the worst thing. Especially since they can charge from conceal. So if you're trading with your gunners and then you charge and kill an operative on conceal and you're suddenly tracking enemy because you charged and fought and killed an operative, that's also a playable thing. But in that instance, I don't think you ever go TAC op as your primary, because you're also trying to kill operatives. So out of the big bad of the metas, though, I don't think anyone's really surprised that Canoptic and Deathwatch are going to be at the top. I think that Nemesis Claw still have a lot more play than people are giving them credit for. I think that the Vox Scream nerf was heavy-handed, but it's also not the end of the world for that team. That's not the only thing holding that team up. For example, if you nerfed Contempt for Blades of Cain, you're going to see that win rate drop off. Just that play alone holds up that team so much, in my opinion.
Yeah, forcing your opponent to play with bad dice. Famously very powerful in a game of bad dice.
And it only takes one. It only takes one of those rolls on a flank, and suddenly you lose that flank. That fight that you thought was a slam dunk, suddenly you only roll a crit, and you can't re-roll any of your 5 dice. And you're like, okay, cool. I guess I hit you for 5 and die. Cool. And then that can determine an entire game because of that ploy alone. So.
Actually, one thing that we didn't get to loop around to was the new TAC op spread. I am kind of curious, since your game plan is to put out a little bit of bait to force your opponent to interact, do you feel like the new TAC op spread and the new crit op spread actually is helping you play that in some sense to get your opponent to kind of come out and engage with you so that you can send out your missiles at the right time?
I think the Blooded are sort of in a weird position with people's mental more than anything, because people see Blooded and they're like, okay, Blooded are going to come at me. so I need to be ready for when they come at me. And then turn 3 comes around and I haven't charged or fought or moved dash to it, and they're like, what is going on? Are you sure you're a blooded player? Because the new TAC ops have definitely changed the way blooded get played. Before, I would take champion into teams and have these threats that could run up, charge, fight, throw a crack grenade, and kill. And now I'm like, okay, if you want to charge here, you can. And if you don't, like if you try to contest the middle point, I'm going to charge and kill whatever touches the middle point. But I'm not trying to dive your lines. I'm not trying to score route. I'm not trying to get dominate. I'm not trying to get champion. I'm not trying to, force these hyper aggressive plays. And even though all of my TAC ops that I have available have to have some sort of player interaction, whether it be throwing models up to get plant devices or killing models to get steal intel, that doesn't mean I have to do it right away. Steal intel is one of the most flexible TAC ops in the game because of the way it scores. You would think that you had to hold one every single turn and then you score 3 at the end for holding 3, but there's no limiter on how many you can hold at the end of the game. So if you're careful in picking your fights properly, while your opponent's, trying to track enemy or plant devices themselves or plant banner, you just focus on killing, keeping your operatives alive and taking positive trades. And at the end of the game, have your commsman walk up and pick up a token, and have your medic come up and pick up a token, and then whoever else happened to live pick up a token, and suddenly you're like, oh, I scored 0 turns 2 and 3. Turn 4, I hold 1, so I get a point, and then I hold 3, so I get 3 more points, and I scored 4, even though the rest of the game, all I was doing is focusing on killing and limiting my opponent's play, which is quite powerful. The more you can limit your opponent's play and have less, that gives them less counterplay into your plan, like the flawlessly it goes.
I guess that kind of bleeds into how blooded look at the end of the game, where a lot of your power pieces are gone, but then you've got your like medic and your comms guy like at the mid board all of a sudden with blooded tokens, and you're like, I guess I'll give him 3 APL and he'll move dash, pick up a point.
Yep, I have multiple times have I given my commsman Gaze of the Gods on turn 4 so that I can move dash, pick up a token. And not only that, but because you can hold 2 in turn 2 and 3 is very commonly for me to move my commsman up a little bit to be either in a better position to pick up in turn 3 or to be in position to pick up at all turn 4, which means that if I pick one up in turn 2 with him, then I can pick up another one in turn 4 with him, and suddenly that's 4 points all in one model, 5 points all in one model, because 1 per turn plus 2 at the end, 5 points all on one model. And so it becomes really easy to do with some of these utility pieces. And that goes into even more about like taking positive trades and preserving your models till the end of the game to be able to actually score those things.
And that's actually something that all the infiltration teams really have access to, right? Like anyone with infiltration can do this, just play a kill game, and then suddenly at the end of the game, if all you've done is take these non-committal interactions, then as long as you have more operatives than your opponent, you just run around and pick everything up.
Yep, especially since
Crude Hounds really good at this because they can move, pick a thing up, and just keep going to the next spot, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem for Crute in specific is they don't have the same damage output that Blooded do.
They're more flexible in the number of ranges that they have access to because everyone can kind of do melee, everyone can kind of shoot, but they're not going to output 12 damage in an activation and end someone.
Yeah, and I've had as a extreme example in that same TTS game against Jason that I talked about earlier, I had my Butcher run up to his only what are the gun turrets called? The Tomb Crawler. The only Tomb Crawler that wasn't on a Canoptic node, my Butcher charged it, rolled 4 crits. He didn't have accurate 2 because he wasn't on the node. He rolled a hit. So I took 4 damage and dealt 24 damage with 4 crits and killed a bug in a single go. Crute don't have that option, ever. They don't even have the chance to do that. They don't have anyone that has that spike. Their highest damage output is their leader to go up to 4 attacks and possibly do 20 damage. That's the highest possible combat they have. Their dogs are the same with 5 attacks at 3-4 ending. So I guess their dogs are more likely to do it. But they're not going to be able to.
The cutthroat can do a reasonable facsimile of a scary operative, but it is only 3-4 damage. Ceaseless lethal 5 tends to help, and then if for whatever reason your opponent misses a bunch of their dice, they can die that way too.
Yeah, but that's still 5 attacks at 4, so I guess 20 damage. If you roll a bunch of crits, yeah.
And at that point, you also get 50 points for a Yahtzee.
Yeah,
they're like... Yeah, like, the difference is that if Crude are going to go in, they're going to like be like, okay, cool, I burst damage for 7, maybe 8 if you did a normal, right, with the cutthroat. And Blooded are like, okay, cool, I do 10 damage on accident and then blow up for 2 or 3 more. So how you want to compare these numbers still? It's real bad.
Yeah, I mean, basically, Kroot are paying for massive amounts of flexibility, but they lose out pretty much in the departments against all the other Horde teams, which is why they haven't really been all that good after the meta kind of kept going into a more elite direction. Do you feel like that's going to be the case at Worlds? Like, where's your general feeling on Blooded going into Worlds? Do you feel like you're situated in a good spot? Do you feel like people are going to underestimate you and you're going to pull one over on them?
I don't think that anyone that sees me with Blooded will underestimate me if they know my history with the team. I think I'm in the best position I have been in any of the 3 years to go to do well and perform well at Worlds. The first year in the Cult Mirror Match year of Worlds, Java was in my pod, and he made 2 more Feel No Pains than mathematically was average, and that determined the entire game. And I think that we're both in the agreeance, and he can correct me if he feels otherwise, but it felt, at least at the time, that we're both agreeance that if he doesn't make those Feel No Pains, that mutant doesn't live, and then he doesn't have a torment on that flank, and I probably go on to win the game if the rest of the game goes the way it did. It was just like such a big thing for that game. And then this last year, the Warp Coven Legionnaire meta, I was surprised to go even in that meta. I'm not going to lie. The fact that I took down wins against both Warp Coven and Hieratech at the height of their power was like an accomplishment for me in my opinion. It was a really difficult meta to play into. So I feel this is probably the best meta, as polarizing as it is. I think this is the best chance I have at performing well and doing well.
All right. Well, what other teams do you feel like will be a surprise pick? We talked about Rekkas. Obviously, Rekkas, have a combination of they're fun to play, which is nice, and they also, because they roll so many dice, you can always spike your way out of a game. Are there any other teams that you kind of think are kind of off people's radars? Obviously, the Elf teams all got hit, but they've been doing pretty well as far as like the broader meta goes. Any other teams?
I already mentioned Mandrakes. I think Mandrakes are off a lot of people's radars, although I know they're very popular overseas. I think that despite their heavy nerfs, I think Sanctifiers still have a lot of play that need to be respected. They still have some functionality in that team that is like, there's just some raw data sheet power in that team that just you can't overlook, in my opinion. Those are 2 of the standouts in my opinion of like sleepers. Any of the other teams that got buffed, I would not be surprised if someone took Casterkin to the event, but I would be surprised if they did well. The data slate didn't do anything to like really solve Casterkin's problems. They made their like play of life a little bit easier, and they opened up another avenue of play, which like the scout change is nice, but it doesn't really solve their problem, right? If you have a shotgun scout and he gets charged and hugged with another Marine or even 10 wound Choppa boy, his options are to fall back or lose a fight because they do not fight well at all. And something I played, I have a pretty wide range of experience with teams. I played scouts in 2nd edition before they got the power knives, and I cannot. It was very tilting to be like, okay, cool. I walk up with my shotgun that has ceaseless, and I shoot your elf, and you made 3 armor saves, take 4, and I died, and I lose that scout. And you're like, cool, that feels great, because they don't have the punch where they need it. They don't have any option to punch where they need it. And at the time, their knives were 3-5, with no source of rending or lethal outside of the one operative that gets it whenever they shorten their move by jumping in, parkouring into combat. Sorry, I have a plane.
No, I think it's all good. Before, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about your local community. Obviously, we talked at the beginning about CritCon, the Cascadia Regional International or independent tournament scene, and Patreon sponsor Tyler. But you obviously run your own little scene up in the Pacific Northwest. You want to talk a little bit about kind of like the vibes out there, where people play games, what's fun, any good things to eat that other people probably don't get a chance to eat before we head out for the day?
Yeah, so the local game store that I run tournaments out of is Tacoma Games. Ryan and Peter and them have been absolutely amazing to me. Let me pretty much abuse their space once a month. So much so that we even gave a golden ticket away this year for an invitational I run every year. If you win if you go 3-0 against people at one of my monthlies, you get to go to the invitational, and the winner of the invitational this year got a golden ticket and will be joining us at Worlds with his Corsairs, which is really cool to see. Terracrox lets me run a league out of them, and I'm pretty active with anyone in the Tacoma area. I know up in Bremerton we got some small tournaments running over there as well. So we have a bunch of kill team going on. It's sort of split up in 3 different areas between Seattle, Bremerton, and Tacoma. But every once in a while for like this big GT and stuff, we come together and make it all happen. And there's a really good number of us. We've gone from having 2 people go from the Pacific Northwest, myself and one other, who's now on your side of the coast. And to now we have at least 7 people from the Pacific Northwest coming to Worlds this year. So it's been really cool to see everything explode and just watch everyone's skill in this game just grow and get better and better and better. It's been proud, almost like a proud dad moment. You're like, I remember you when you didn't even know what a barricade was. Like, it's really cool to see everyone really like step up and up their game to give us some really good fun times.
Yeah, I think that's always the story for most of our scenes. As long as you put the work in and water the lawn, it will grow over time. You just got to be a good influence, teach people that you can only race against the past version of yourself. You don't got to race against other people. You just got to be better every day, and eventually you'll have your own like burgeoning kill team scene, which is a common story that we've had on the podcast. So it's good to hear that it's still going.
Yep, it's been awesome. It's Tacoma Open. The first Tacoma Open was 19 people, and now we consistently get 70, 80 people every year for it. So it's been really cool to see that just blow up.
Yeah, that's huge. That is an inspiring story.
Also, I think one thing about Blooded that I want to touch on, if you specialize in a team and you like that team, you enjoy giving people good games with that team, whatever that team is. I don't care if it's Kroot, I don't care if it's Kasperkin. Play that team, enjoy that team. Like you watch a lot of podcasts and a lot of YouTube content creators, and no one puts Blooded above B tier ever. And yeah, they had some weaker moments at the start of the edition. B tier is probably where we sat because Warp Coven and Legionnaires were just a tier above everyone else. And if you couldn't compete with them, you were not in the A tier. It's just how that went. And it's a thing, but you can still find success with the team if you like the team and put the time in. And there are play styles that can fit you. If you have fun with the team, stick with it. Just because it's ranked D tier in your favorite content creators tier list doesn't mean you should pull off the team. Blooded have been with me for since they came out. Blooded struck something in me, and they've been my team for the last 3 years. I'm really going to be sad to see them go, but I know that they've really enabled me to help the community grow and show that if you stick with it, you can really get really good, even if it's just really good at that one team.
Yeah, that's really, really solid advice. Definitely glad you said that. Kind of curious on that note, if you already have your eye on what team will be next.
Absolutely not. I have no idea what I'm playing next. I do this series on my Patreon where I play a team for 10 games, and I will do a summary of the team after that. I've taken a pause on it because with Worlds coming up and with the GT close back to back, and with the change of crit ops, I had to relearn how to play Blooded to the extent that I want to play them at. So I took some time, to refocus in and get that down. Coming post Worlds, I'll probably be picking that back up with Hunter Clade is what got voted on, so that's probably what I'll be playing next, at least casually. But as far as the team that I want to really focus on, I don't have anything that really speaks to me yet. The Murderwing team seems very interesting, but I know that my historic run with elite teams is I get bored. There's a play pattern that I'm really accustomed using with elites, and I don't like the play pattern. It's just it is straightforward. It is a very Marine thing to be like, I'm going to come in and kill you because I'm a Marine. But like, it just isn't. It doesn't have the same effect as like when I was playing Wormblade for the stint that I played Wormblade, when I played Commandos for the stint that I played Commandos. Having the tools and being able to use the tools in cool ways is like one of my favorite things. I will say that playing Nemesis Claw gave that itch of like doing the cool thing with the cool abilities. A big part of that is proclivity for murder, stopping fallbacks, things of that nature. That team still has a lot of strength in it that I think is underrated, even with the Vox Scream nerf. But none of the other teams really strike me as something that I like to do and play that are still going to be around. A lot of the teams that I have interest in are leaving. Phobos, Wormblade, Warp Coven got gutted. A lot of these teams that like have the tools. I guess the next one would be Brood Brothers, but Brood Brothers feel figured out to me, so I don't have almost nearly as much interest as I did when I at least picked up the models. So I'm sort of waiting on a functionality in the game to see like what draws my interest. For all I know, it'll be Space Wolves. I'm almost certain it won't be stealth suits, but we'll see how it goes. I'm really hoping it's not the Sisters of Battle team, only because I know that our local guy, Zach, is already dead set on playing the Sisters of Battle whenever they do come out, and I don't want to double up on him just because it just feels a little awkward. Him and I are at the same GTs like all the time, so, and mirror matches can suck. So we'll see how it goes, and we'll see what comes to pass.
Yeah. You mentioned Mandrakes before as one of the maybe interesting picks. Have you personally played Mandrakes at all?
I've played against them a number of times, and in person, the people that I've been playing against have made some fundamental mistakes with the team, in my opinion. Example, going Implant into Blooded is just like not the right call in my opinion. The few Mandrake players that have really impressed me have all been overseas, and I think that if I'm the Mandrake's game plan is just sort of out there, and it's really hard to practice against unless you have someone that plays Mandrakes well. So you need to, one, have a good Mandrake player that you can learn against, and two, learn their tricks through them, which is like the availability for that is really limited. So to have a good game plan into them can suddenly shift with one good teleport, which is like part of the trixiest thing about that team, right? And which is why they're probably the most interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, who knows? That might be a fun one to explore after Blooded as well. I've been playing a bunch of Mandrakes, and they've been an absolute blast. I feel like it's the first time that a team has felt like it fit me like a glove since Phobos.
Yeah, I have a hot take about Season 2 teams. Is that Season 2 is going to go out with Season 1 when they do the changeover. This is a purely tinfoil hat theory. In particular, because in the player pack, they said that Season 1 and Season 2 teams will be allowed at this Worlds. We all sort of knew that Season 2 teams were going to be allowed, so why would you say that? So I have this very tinfoil hat theory that Season 2 teams will be cycled out. I know that doesn't apply to Mandrakes, but it's just one of those things that was on my mind because of it.
Yeah, that'd be quite a whiplash if they did, but I guess we'll find out.
It won't happen.
I don't see any reason for them to. I think the Season 1 trim is going to be the largest trim that we're planning to have, because it is White Dwarf teams, normal teams, and then it could be maybe like the bonus Inquisitions, Ashes of the Faith team, but it seems unlikely.
Yeah, but the difference is they've released more recently. They've released more than one season in a year, and if you do that, you have to make the cut somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, like the 1 year is is 9 teams plus the warp covens, right? So we'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens. I don't think there's any real like you said, it's just a wild conspiracy theory, and I think that seems like a good spot to leave it. And for anyone who's going to Worlds, come say hi to the three of us. And if we don't see you at Worlds, hopefully we'll see you at a GT in the future. Maybe the Renegade Open at Jason's home base.
Oh yeah, Renegade Open is coming up pretty soon. I think it's sold out. We're trying to see if we can scrape up spots to open up another table or two. But in any case, if you are interested in coming and you want to get on the wait list, message me directly and I will get you on the wait list. And it's going to be a blast.